What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Bunch of stuff to talk about today. First, though, before we get started, I do want to remind you there is still the 60,000 subscriber giveaway going on with the Metroid Samus Returns Edition new 3DS XL still up for grabs. Make sure you're subscribed. Check the link in the description below so you can be entered to win. But with that, guys, let's get started today. First thing we have today is, well, the Super Nintendo Classic. That is, of course, out tomorrow. I'm still trying to figure out my strategy around getting the thing because I have to really pick which store I'm going to go to. So if you have any suggestions, I guess let me know down in the comments. I have pretty much every store around me. I could go to a Walmart, go to Target, I could go to Best Buy, pretty much anywhere. I was trying to figure out the best place. Also, if you're an employee at one of them, let me know if any of them are doing midnight releases. I'm still trying to figure out if I should go right in the morning or if I should actually go at midnight. But the big thing here is, well, reviews are actually coming out for Star Fox 2. I know, it's weird to say that, right? It's 2017. Hey, reviews for the Super Nintendo Star Fox 2 are coming out, and it got okay reviews. Some places gave it kind of lower reviews, for example, IGN giving it a 5, whereas others, such as Nintendo Life, gave it an 8, and even Eurogamer just simply recommends it. Now, of course, it's a little odd to review a game like this in 2017, considering a lot of them are looking at Star Fox 2 after just looking at something like a PS4 or an Xbox One, obviously. So the visual difference is going to affect, I think, a lot of people's review, even without them realizing, especially controls, since you're trying to do really control a 3D, really a 3D setup with a D-pad on the Super Nintendo. So I hope really any other reviews that come out remember that it's a game that was back in the 90s. But still, overall, everyone who has reviewed the Super Nintendo Classic has said it is worth it. But something else that kind of came out here that I was pretty much thinking was going to be the case, if you follow me on Twitter, which you should if you are not now, you guys probably see me talking now and then about the internals of the Super Nintendo Classic. And yes, Eurogamer did break the system down, and it turns out it's the same board as the Nintendo Classic, same hardware, everything. In fact, someone even took the Nintendo Classic and removed its guts and then put the Super Nintendo Classic guts into that, and it fit fine, seemingly. So I'll still do a teardown. I still have, obviously, my Nintendo Classic. I take that one apart too. So we'll still compare and contrast and check them out. I kind of wanted to be the first one to do it, but I mean, I didn't get it early. Obviously, Eurogamer is going to open it up. So just know it's the same board. That's probably why they are, believe it or not, that's probably why they're redoing the NES Classic, because they're realizing they're just making the same board. They're just going to flash a different OS and image to it and send it out, and obviously put it in a different shell. So no, they didn't reinvent the wheel or anything with the SNES Classic, although I have a feeling most of us assumed they did not, considering when the NES Classic was hacked, it was playing up to Nintendo 64 games. Either way, I'm excited. I'm going to do my best to get it, and hopefully if any of you guys have any advice on where to go, I'll read the comments and try to figure out what the best course action is to get one either tonight or tomorrow morning. Now let's move over to really one of the biggest topics of the day yesterday, and that comes down to Marvel vs. Capcom, its performance in Japan, which was heavily lacking. We talked about the UK sales charts where they give us rankings. That was the other day. Ranked at number 12, which was a problem. Obviously, this is a big new, big new game that's really been with a successful IP with Marvel vs. Capcom. Big new game coming out. Fighting fans, anyone who's like pro fighters or really into fighting games, love the thing. Apparently, it is a great game in terms of fighters. However, well, a lot of casuals are not picking this up, and according to the Media Crates charts, Capcom has a long road ahead of it with this game. Let's take a look at the charts. Pokken Tournament actually took the top. That's DX on the Switch at 53,395. Below that, Splatoon 2 still sticking around. No problem there, 21,897. Winning 11 below that. NBA 2K18 actually came in at number 4, which is a little surprising. Mario Kart Deluxe right below that. Destiny 2, Dragon Quest 10, and then we have to go all the way down to number 8. That's right, number 8 for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, 8,273 copies sold, and keep in mind that is on the back of 5.3 million PS4s that are in Japan. That attach rate is insanely low. Real quick, here are the hardware charts. The Nintendo Switch still in that range between 40 and 45,000 units. 43,000 units, just jumped over 1.7 million units sold in Japan. PS4 right below that, 23,000. 3DS under that, 19,000. Vita, 3,707. The Vita is still pretty strong in Japan, surprisingly. All the way down from there, the Xbox One, just because we like to keep an eye on it, is actually up from the 57 units the previous week up to 76, so it's climbing. But back to the charts here for the games, because really everyone is focusing right now on Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite because it is not having a good opening week. We saw what happened with the UK, really obscenely low on that chart. Should have at least been in the top 5. It's not even in the top 10. That's a problem. In Japan, it does crack the top 10, but I mean, come on, with that many PS4s there, it should have at least beaten Pokken. That should have been something that I think should have debuted above 50,000 units sold with that massive amount of user base there. But here comes the new Switch game that's not even a new game, guys. It's a port. Capcom, this is the insane amounts of irony here, Capcom, a company known to just port after port after port, brings out a new game in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and cannot outsell a port. With Pokken, it can't outsell a port. Pokken just ran straight over this game. It's really weird to see. It definitely... It's hard to say why this happens. Really, everyone has a theory right now. Oh, it's not set up well. It wasn't marketed well to casual gamers they do make up the mass amount of the market. People like to say hardcore gamers do. No, casual market does that. And at this point, maybe it's because there's no X-Men in it. I personally cannot figure out how they ended up leaving Wolverine out. I know there's a lot of licensing disputes and all this stuff everywhere, conflicts, but figure it out. I didn't think we'd see Spider-Man in an Avengers movie because of Sony and everybody else involved, but they made it happen. I just can't believe they couldn't even get Wolverine. Someone who was a staple throughout Marvel vs. Capcom is just absent. Maybe DLC, I don't know, but at this point, it's too late because it wasn't there to begin with. So where do we go from here is the question. And if you don't believe me, if you think, oh, Marvel vs. Capcom has never done well in Japan, well, guess what? Here are the numbers for the previous iterations of the series. I mean, just for fun, let's go all the way back to the Dreamcast. That first week was 62,373. Granted, this was a big deal, obviously, because arcade-perfect ports were coming to home consoles. That's the first Marvel vs. Capcom. The second one, 72,388. Again, these are arcade perfect ports, so it was a big deal at the time. I understand why those numbers are kind of inflated. Go down from there, though, the PS2, its first week, 48,998, and that's them reselling Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that was already on the Dreamcast. The Xbox numbers, I'm just going to be honest with you, Xbox is terrible in Japan. It's not going to sell a lot of units, but consider the fact that the original Xbox was barely sold in Japan, still got almost 3,000 units. That should tell you how bad Infinite has sold there. But let's go to something a little more recent. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on the PS3, and then we can even see a 360, which, by the way, that means the 360 version outsold this PS4 version of Infinite in its first week, and the PS3 version, 66,921. It went on to only sell 100,000 units, and that really, and I'm not even kidding, guys, that really concerns me for the future of Infinite at this point. So now what? Well, it needs to do well in MPDs, that's for sure. We need to see an MPD really ranking, I would say, in the top 3, or Capcom is going to look at this franchise and they're going to try to figure out what they do from here. Do they go back and make another one? Do they maybe include more characters? Do they maybe change up the visuals? Maybe it goes back to that hand-drawn look. It's hard to say at this point why it's not selling well. Awareness seems to be kind of low on it, though. I will say that I don't see a lot of advertising for it. If I go to the stores, there's no posters up for it or anything. So, man, this is really tough. And if you're a fan of the Marvel vs. Capcom series, I don't know if Capcom's going to go back to that well for a little while now, because at this point, they need to make their money back. So if you think there are a bunch of DLC characters now, get ready. Get ready, because they're going to squeeze the small user base they have now as much as humanly possible to get that kind of money out of it, because it's tough. If they had a larger audience, they'd probably be a little more comfortable, but they don't. If the MPD ranking comes out and it doesn't crack the top 3, don't expect to see Marvel vs. Capcom revived for a while. They didn't do a very good job with Street Fighter V either. I mean, that is at 1.7 million. It's been this long and it still has not cracked their 2 million prediction. It's fighting games on Capcom, not good right now. And this is from a company that, of course, laughed off something like the Switch for Infinite because they were so comfortable releasing on an Xbox One and the PS4. Seems right now they could use as many systems as possible for Infinite right now. Just anything they can release on, they may want to consider it. But tough times right now for Capcom. Next up, let's talk about a company that, well, they had to do something about about their poor sales. This is why it's so tough in the video game industry when they try to strike out with a new IP, for example, and it doesn't go well. I'm talking about Volition. So if you played Agents of Mayhem, this is really the developers that created and published Saints Row, the Saints Row series. It's one that a lot of people purchased, played, and liked. And I liked it more when it was in its heyday, its original Saints Row, because it seemed to poke more fun at Grand Theft Auto and it was a good time overall. It didn't take itself seriously. And then it got a little too out there with superpowers. But they tried to kind of do something new. Agents of Mayhem comes out, and it doesn't do well at all. So now they are forced to lay people off. And this comes from way of Kotaku, reporting that Volition, again, the studio behind Agents of Mayhem, has laid off over 30 people this past week, and that includes the general manager, Dan Cermak. And that's kind of an issue because, well, they probably could have released Saints Row 5 and they wouldn't have had this problem just because of the namesake. It's getting to that point, I'm telling you, where sequels are going to be the safe bet for a lot of companies, and they're going to be concerned about trying to really go with a new IP, something created, because they don't know if people are going to latch on, recognize it, or even care. But you're going to see this now. It's going to be sequel after sequel for the most part. You'll occasionally get that new IP, but seeing Volition really have to lay off people is a little concerning, especially if you're a fan of Saints Row, although at this point I would expect a new Saints Row game to come out from them next, rather than try anything else at this point. Now let's move from there over to something kind of fun, kind of interesting. It's not really something you would do for any real reason other than just to do it. And that is playing PUBG, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, on a Game Boy Color, which you'll see here. This comes way of a person on YouTube by the name of Press Down to Jump, and what they did was they decided to use their PC to play the game and then stream it over to their Game Boy using, well, a Raspberry Pi that is built into the shell. So it's not an actual Game Boy playing it, it's a Raspberry Pi built into the shell with an LCD screen in that form factor. So they are attempting to play a game like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds using a D-pad, 2 buttons, start and select. Of course, it doesn't do well, and this is something to see just as like, hey, that's kind of cool. I probably wouldn't pursue it, but still, it's pretty funny to see a Raspberry Pi and a Game Boy Color shell playing what is arguably the most popular game on Steam right now. In our last bit of news, I'm going to quickly go over the PlayStation Plus and the Xbox Live Gold games that are going to be free next month, because one of them is pretty interesting, because I think some people missed out on this game, and that's Metal Gear Solid 5. Is actually going to become a PlayStation Plus free game, if you want to call it free. Obviously, you're paying for the service, but it's going to be a game you can download to play. So if you've missed out on it, I would check it out on the PlayStation Store next month. But also, if you're into horror games, and the Amnesia Collection will also become a PlayStation Plus free to download game. On the other side, Xbox Live's offerings are, I think, a little weaker this month coming up. Gone Home Console Edition will be free for their games with gold, and then the Turing Test will also be free with games with gold for anyone wanting to download it. Definitely check out Metal Gear Solid 5 though, because if you missed out on it, it's a really fun game, long game by the way. It'll take you a while to beat it, but I liked it all the way up to the end when it had that weird abrupt ending. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but they did kind of fix it and talk about it a little further down the road because so many people were confused by it. It was a whole thing, obviously, with Kojima that took place. But if you've never played a Metal Gear Solid 5 or anything, check it out. It's a good time, and if you already have the service and you pay for the online, why not download it and play it? And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me think about any of the stuff we talked about today, whether it is the Super Nintendo Classic and Star Fox. Should Star Fox 2 be judged more in 2017 standards with reviews, or should they kind of go back in time to the 90s when that would have come out and kind of give it a review around, well, its peers at that point, you know, around the Sega that was out. Maybe actually the PS1, now I'm thinking about it, when that was going to come out, may have been out at the time, but do you think they should grade it now based on what we would like, or just what it would have been like if it had actually come out and not been canceled? Also, let me know what you think about Marvel vs. Capcom placing way down in Japan, even compared to its older, really, Marvel vs. Capcom games that did much better. Is this an issue, and is Capcom, do they need to rethink their strategy around what they're releasing? I mean, do they need to either start moving more games to the Switch, where they seem to be getting a better following at this point, or do they need to kind of revise what IPs they're pushing right now? Maybe they should go and dust off Mega Man and see if he has another run in him. That's it for now, guys. I'll see you next time.